now.
I have the YouTube.
So it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You're allowed to share.
Pick this up. And my sister's reading a book and loving it.
What was I going to say?
Take yourself, sir.
No, you have to pick that up.
Always a good way to start. Let me make sure we're on. We are on. I think people get a good.
I want to know how you knew that was Carmen Electra.
I told him that was Carmen Electra.
I asked him who all the people were on your wall because I've always looked at those photos and wondered who they were.
And it's Carmen Electra next to Stonewall Jackson. And on that note, I want to welcome everyone to The World According to Ben Stein. We are joined once again, and he was sorely missed. Sorely.
Very
from American greatness, Ben the Rock Boychuk. Welcome back, Ben.
And we missed you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back.
And of course, from 93.1 WIBC,
It is
Bam,
the future of conservative talk radio.
You totally messed it up. You did great, Ben. Thank you. And of course, from the Media Action Network, the all-star himself, Ken LaCourte. Welcome back as always, Ken.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Excellent voice. Excellent.
And right off the bat, I want to welcome everybody that's in the chat room. I want to say hello.
Me, if I may say so.
Thank you, Mrs. Levin, for starting it off right away, getting me insecure about the way I say things. But I want to welcome everybody in the chat room. I want to remind everybody that you can download our podcast pretty much wherever podcasts are downloadable. And of course, please leave a 5-star review. We have some really exciting news tonight, but of course, I didn't welcome the most important man. He's writer, provocateur, actor, saint, sinner, lover, husband, and of course, father, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein, America's teacher.
And grandfather.
And grandfather, America's teacher, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. We salute you, sir.
God bless you, sir.
So right off the bat, I want to get into this thing, Ken, that we are working on with Ken LaCourte from Media Action Network. But I want to bring up really quickly why this has been bothering me so much, the All-Star Game. I know it seems trivial to some, but for me, I'll be honest, some of my fondest childhood memories, and I've shared this with Ben Stein, very similar to his father, some of my favorite memories are listening to baseball games on the radio and, hearing that great call by Joe Buck when Kirk Gibson hit that home run, going, I don't believe what I just saw, and having that image in my head. And there's something pure about baseball. It's America's pastime. It's a sport that celebrates everybody now. Thank God. And there's something extremely special about it. And it really is, everybody's had a catch hopefully with their dad or their child. And there's just something very special maybe about baseball. It's unlike other sports. And so I was very hurt by this. And I'm very hurt that baseball has been Ken and Ben involved with this voter and BLM stuff, Ben Stein, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. As my wife would say, heart-rendering. It is really, really sad. Didn't need to happen. If people wanted to express their unhappiness with Georgia's voting laws, which are not at all restrictive. By the way, the Wall Street Journal has done a very thorough analysis of them compared with other states. They're not at all restrictive. People could have chosen another way to do it. But to attack people's means of relaxation, attack people's means of entertainment. My father, God rest his soul, the greatest of great fathers, used to call baseball the great American anodyne. Anodyne is a painkiller, by which he meant whatever was going on in your daily life, watch a great baseball game, even a mediocre baseball game, because we were in Washington, D.C., we had the Senators, they weren't that great, but it takes your mind off everything. Now, suddenly, everything is politicized, everything is Bolshevized, everything is racialized, and it's a terribly, terribly sad situation.
Ken LaCourte, so let's talk about quickly what we're doing, because with Media Action Network, The World According to Ben Stein, we have started a petition. Ken, please tell people what it is.
It's all started with a guy named Judah.
This guy over here.
Yes, the consigliere of Ben Stein came up with a gosh darn good idea. And he called me up and he said, So I'm not into sports. It's all a bunch of whatever. Guys run around after a white ball. But I'm so tired of every time I turn around, my pizza has to be politicized, or wait, hey, there's not a black person in the cockpit at United Airlines. So he said a sentence and he was like, there's one man who could fix this situation and cause some pain to Major League Baseball for being completely stupid on this. And it was obvious what he was saying at that point. And so Judah had the idea of, look, let's see if we can convince Donald Trump, give him the idea, encourage, he's going to do what he wants to do, to hold a rally in Georgia head to head with the All-Star game. He would both help Georgians out who are losing millions of dollars worth of this game because they passed some innocuous legislation that the press had decided was it was their racism du jour. It was silly. The concept of calling, oh, you can't give hamburgers to people in line is now the modern Jim Crow is ridiculous. But the concept that Trump could go there, he could hold one of those rallies, he could charge money for it, and either buy himself another jet or give it to the Republican whatevers in Georgia. He would put a pound of flesh. It's like Fox would probably pick that up, and so you've got whoever streams the All-Star game versus Fox and OAN and Newsmax streaming that. It would take a bite out of them. It would allow 50,000 Americans to say enough is enough at this, and that would be the perfect time to do that. So we popped a petition up. We're up to like 4,500 people on that. We will use all of our influences. I know I don't have any good direct connections in with that, but if we can get him to do that, it would be a wonderful strike against this cancel culture bullshit, whatever we call it these days.
And speaking of people with connections, that brings us to first Ben Boychuk.
Well, Ken, really quickly, could you tell people where exactly to find the petition?
Yeah, do we have that link up? So you can go to MediaActionNetwork.com and you scroll down a little bit after you see a box.
Say it slower.
Media, you're right. Thank you. I used to live in New York, so I'm kind of fast talking, fast thinking.
I do this for a living, Ken. Say it slow.
I'll say it in reverse. MediaActionNetwork.com. Scroll down a little bit slowly, and you'll see the very first action item down there is to sign up for this. We got a couple other good ideas to get attention, and I think we should have a little bit of a brainstorming session on what could we do to encourage Trump to do something like this? Because I don't think it would be great. It is the perfect move, and it was a great idea.
Thank you. I wouldn't have thought of it.
Well done, Judah. I think let's note that Judah is not bragging, and that it had to be brought up by somebody else, and that Judah did not brag at all, and it is quite a brilliant idea.
Thank you. And I honestly, this is, I wouldn't have thought of it without Ben Stein, and I wouldn't have thought about it without you, Ken LaCourte, who got me into thinking about punching back against this stuff. But Ben Boychuk, how are you going to help us out? That's the question tonight.
Well, American Greatness does have a rather sizable readership, and so certainly we're going to want to promote the petition. And it used to be the case that people in Trump's circle read our stuff, and maybe it'll get to them that way. We'll find out. But
what are we going to do about Indiana?
Robert Kendall.
So Judah will be on the Mock and Rob show tomorrow. Time to be determined. He's on the West Coast, so he's going to wake up at like 5 a.m. and tape an interview with me. We're going to play back tomorrow. I think this is an awesome idea. Judah called me a couple days ago and told me about it. I said, I think it's wonderful. Sign me up for it. I'll help promote it any way I can. So tomorrow at some point between 9 and noon, Judah will be on the Mock and Rob show on 93.1 WIBC. Bam. That's how my dad says it to me now when I walk in the door. Hey, there's Rob Kendall. Bam. The future of conservative talk radio. And I think this is great.
I think it's wonderful, Ben, and Ben Stein. And getting back to you, it's like we need to figure out, as Ken has brought up, of ways of counter programming. And there is no better way to, for I think, the counter programming than doing something like this. We're forcing it upon them.
Well, we're talking about America's #1 media personality, certainly in terms of politics. Nobody else is even close. Why should not he use that in furtherance of his ideas, many of which are turning out, if not all of which, are turning out to be incredibly important. To me, it's amazing that every day's newspaper doesn't carry a story saying Trump was right about the southern border, and we're all sorry. I was on an airplane flight across the country yesterday, and I spent a large part of the time, reading the New York Times cover to cover, and it's all mocking, contemptuous, so-called analysis of everything having to do with Trump. But of course, if you read the stories, if you can find a little tiny bit of news wormed in there among the analysis and the commentary, you see he was right. The southern border is falling apart. America is being besieged by immigrants, and God bless them. They have terrible lives at home. They do need to have help, but some kind of order, some kind of law and order seems to me to be a good idea. That's all Trump wanted. Not a bad idea at all. By the way, if you do read the New York Times cover to cover, make sure you have a way to jump out of the plane at 40,000 feet. The stories are such relentless, cruel, disgusting contempt for the United States of America, and such worshipful praise of any kind of non-white violence against Asians, against whites, against anyone. It is scandalous. It has become just a propaganda organ for the most militant elements of the African American freedom fighter community, and very, very sad. Rarely takes the part of the victims of this violence. Almost always takes the part of the perpetrators.
And Ben, you are the only one I could guarantee almost in this panel that has a subscription to the New York Times. I'm not sure about Ken, but I would imagine what
I steal it.
Ben Boychuk, I'm shocked. I didn't even know that you could get the New York Times.
I don't get it in print anymore, but I do.
We do get it in print, and
like you can go to archive.is.
I'm sorry, say again.
You go to a site called archive.is. It's one of these archivers. So you get a URL from the New York Times, and you don't want to spend your hard-earned money on the New York Times. And you go to that. I can show you how to do it later. It says, "Oh, look for an archive version." You pop it in there, and you can read it for free.
But I will tell you that you can't do that. Also, get up and down and go to the men's room on the airplane, which we old people have to do a great deal. But if I may say so, if you were to read that newspaper in detail, as I did yesterday, and I have family members who read it in extreme detail, way, way, way beyond what I read it at, and they, I don't know how they can leave their house each day without being terrified, because the stories are depicted in America, in which basically the Ku Klux Klan is running everything, except that there are a few brave African American, or other ethnic groups who are fighting them. But those groups do have the help of the FBI and all the politicians.
I have a better question for you, Ben. Why do you subject yourself to it, knowing what you're going to read? Why not just hit yourself with a hammer?
Because I want to be well informed enough to comment on this show.
Great answer. And I know a lot of you aren't sports fans, but this All-Star game and the BLM stuff is sort of a metaphor for what's happening to a lot of the things on this panel that we all love separately. So Ken, you might not be a sports fan. Ben, Boychuk, I'm pretty sure you're not a sports fan. Rob, you probably love high school basketball. And college basketball. I know
what's the profiling going on there.
And but I want to know from each of you what viewing habits have changed, or listening habits, because Ben Boychuk is a huge music fan, and it's hard to listen to music when Ben Boychuk, if the people you grow up listening to have asinine points of view and scream them sometimes.
Well, that's true, except I tend not to pay attention to that, and I also tend not to. My late father always used to ask, you know, in the course of writing columns and things like that. How can you do your job without, you know, paying attention to what's on the TV news? I said, because I read the stuff that ends up on the TV news. I don't watch, you know, sorry, Ken, I haven't watched Fox News in probably 10 years, maybe more. I don't watch One America News or Newsmax. I tend to avoid televised media. Try to read as much as I can, like Ben Stein, and you know, pick up information where I can get it, and try to be informed that way. But so in a sense, my media consumption habits haven't changed all that much, although I tend to read less institutional conservative media. I don't really read National Review anymore, for example.
I think it's a great magazine, but
It was.
I think, well, you're right. It was. It missed the boat at a certain point. And of course, when Mr. Buckley was editing it, it was extremely beautifully edited and beautifully written. But let's take this. I was at the airport in Washington yesterday, Washington National Airport. It's very diverse. A good 50% of the people in the hall and boarding the airplane were non-white, a good 50%. Many of the attendants on the plane were non-white. And yet you would think, if you read the New York Times, that the Ku Klux, as I said, the Ku Klux Klan was running everything in America, and these people somehow were fugitives. They weren't fugitives. Many of them were sitting in first class. And I keep thinking, there's a reality in America, which is that racial dignity is being applied to everyone in a giant way that is just totally missed by the left-wing media. And the reality is that America is enjoying a golden, wonderful age of racial equality and racial opportunity. And somehow that's just totally missed. And as I say, people say to me all the time, why are you out and about so much? And I love being out and about, but I like to see what's real. The princess and the prince discuss what's real and what is not. It doesn't matter outside the gates of Eden.
Beautifully said. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to That Man, the World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's listening in the YouTube chat. Remind everybody, get our newsletter at benstein.substack.com. Also download the podcast. But it's really important tonight that we get this message out. We do it collectively. You're going to find this on American Greatness with amgreatness.com. You're going to find this on at LaCourte News or a MediaActionNetwork.com. You're going to find this on Ben's Parlor at Ben Stein on Parlor, and hopefully Ben will write something great for the American Spectator, spectator.org.
That's my main outlet. I mean, they're my super pals, except for you, Drew. They're my main outlet. They're my super pals. I love them beyond words.
And of course, Rob Kendall from 93 Run.
Bam.
Bam.
I have a question.
My dad used to bam me a lot, but it wasn't quite.
Bam. Let's all go.
Yeah.
I have a question for this group because I think it's important. And Jude, I'm going to ask you this tomorrow because it's one thing I've found is when people are more apt to have buy-in when they know what they're working towards. So like just saying, we're going to try to get Trump to do this. People go, oh, okay, that's nice. I've got Trump to do an interview before. I know how hard it is to get Trump to do something. Do we have an idea of what sort of number of signatures you're going to need to draw his attention? Like, because I had something to offer him, which was media time in a primary that he needed to win in an area he needed to win. So like, of course he was going to do it, right? Because he was told this guy is influential. How many signatures do you think we need on this thing before Trump goes, okay, that's interesting?
It's hard to answer the number. I mean, maybe over 10,000, but you need enough so that a couple
way over 10,000.
Yeah, but you need enough to really. The answer is you need enough to have a couple publications in the conservosphere to say, hey, this is kind of a cute thing, and one of the 16 guys that he has working for him print it out and walk in and say, hey, look, this is happening there. I'm not sure if that's a hard number to answer. But you know, it needs to look. It's patently such a good idea that I think that every person I've mentioned to is like, oh my gosh, that's great. And I think the second guy who walks into his his tanning salon in Boca Raton or wherever he is and says, Mr. Trump, this is getting a little steam, it'll be like, huh. I mean, obviously, look, it's a real deal for them to do something like that, but he's probably still has the mechanism in place, probably still has the campaign guys there who threw, 30 of these huge things before. He's got a couple months to do it, and it's such a win-win all around for him. Unless he's got an overall, I want to stay out of the limelight. He's obviously been intentionally quiet for a while. I suspect he's just sharpening his swords, and he's going to come back.
I think he's probably pretty damn tired, but I think he's the kind of person who would wake up from the thrill of combat. I mean, he is the ultimate Rocky. It's the thrill of the combat. As whatever Sylvester Stallone, who went to the same junior high school as I did, and it's I think
at the same time.
Yes, he and I are the same age. I think he might be a year older.
And they used to box. They used to box.
Goldie Hawn too. Yeah. Anyway.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Damn. What did they
all
put?
Three of you were there at the same
water
time
in that junior high.
What did you say?
Goldie Hawn, Ben Stein, and Sylvester Stallone.
And also ideologically not exactly a close kin, but a very close friend, Carl Bernstein. So there you are.
Wait a second, real quick, Judah, real quick, and then I promise I'll let you get back to it. Are you telling me, Ben, that like at the same time, Ben Stein, Sylvester Stallone, Goldie Hawn, and Carl Bernstein were all at the same junior high school?
Carl, I don't think Goldie was at the same junior high. She went to one, actually, that my sister went to and was a cheerleader at, called Eastern Junior High. But but Carl and Sly and I were all in junior high together. At Montgomery Hills Junior High, the worst place in the world.
I want to get to Ben Boychuk, though, on your question, because a lot of American Greatness's stuff was coinciding with Trump's rise, if that's a good way of saying it, Ben Boychuk.
Right. So, yeah, American Greatness started in 2016, right around the time he had secured his nomination. But, we've had our readership grow enormously in the past 4 years, and still going great. And so, publications like ours that are very attuned to, the sort of conservative populism that President Trump helped foster. I think this would be something that our readers would be interested in, and we've had several pieces this week too, just on this really kind of a almost suicidal move by Major League Baseball, because among other things, it invites scrutiny from Congress. They're tax exempt. They're exempt from antitrust laws.
And by the way, I think the whole idea of scrutinizing people on the basis of racial inclusion or racial exclusion is just scratching the surface. I would love to know how many members of the Democrat caucus in the Congress are members of the Chevy Chase Club. Now, that's a very fancy club on Connecticut Avenue in Washington, D.C. At least when I was growing up, no Jude Rouse. I think they might have one or two Jews now, not many. There's a club right near us in the desert called El Dorado. A very powerful corporate chieftains, no Jews, no
They
black.
wouldn't let me in. Go figure.
What?
They wouldn't let me in. It had nothing to do with I couldn't afford it.
This was, and one of the members was an old friend of my wife's father, and so she proposed Alex and me for membership, and Alex is my beloved bride, and we were seconded by like 10 people, and then we were vetoed, blackballed by some people from LA, and they called to tell me, and I said that. May I ask why? I mean, you guys solicited me to join. I didn't ask to join. You solicited me to join. And they said, well, we don't take people in entertainment. And I said, You mean you would not have taken Ronald Reagan? And that was just hilarious, just hilarious.
That is a very funny story. But Ken, actually, you ran a story today, which a lot of people, I didn't see it covered anywhere else but LaCourte News. I could be wrong, Ben Boychuk, where basically Major League Baseball was threatened by the media that if they didn't capitulate, they would go after the players. Ken LaCourte.
It's a nice baseball field you got there. Wouldn't want something to happen to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But look, here's the thing, though. The reason why this is successful is because only one side is playing this game. And it's only the little weenies on Twitter being like, blah, 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 blah. And once we start poking them back in the eye a couple times, and once they start seeing a conservative backlash to some of this, then at least that enters into their calculus. I mean, right now, if you're sitting up at the penthouse of wherever the baseball people sit and talk about baseball things, you say, oh, we're getting a lot of pushback from this and that. Okay, well, let's just screw it. Let's do all this and that. And, it's probably Trump and he was horrible and all of this stuff. But if we have a handful or more than a handful of successful counterpunches back to the throat, and makes their eyes water a little bit, then at least the next guys, when they're in that meeting and AOC is like, I'm never going to go to a baseball game again, they say, okay, let's look at this in context. And the reality is, over the last 10 years, one side has been aggressively fighting and the other side has been like, let me put down my Earl Grey tea and let's discuss this. And that just hasn't worked for us.
And Matt,
we're losing our culture because of it.
Ben, I'm sorry I cut you off. Go ahead, Ben.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's all you.
I was going to say, we have this very interesting thing that Judah and I believe Mr. Kendall and I have discussed, which is the people who are pressuring Major League Baseball to move the game, executives of corporations, public corporations owned by the public, not owned by the management, owned by the public. We don't know if the public was consulted at all. They're the owners. The management are the trustees for the owners. The owners are the fiduciary beneficiaries. They should have been consulted. They should have had a vote. None of that happened. The management acted like they owned the company, and they don't. This is the basis for a lot of class action litigation. And I think there should be class action litigation about this. What will the effects on the management be? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Even if the company doesn't lose one penny by moving and insisting on moving, still the management has badly mistreated the stockholders. That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah, can I follow up on that real fast? Because the Masters is going on right now, and they tried to pressure the Masters, which is in Georgia, and the Masters said, that's nice, your complaint will be ignored in the order in which it was received. And that I watched 12 hours of that golf tournament today. My radio show was terrible because I was paying attention to that instead of the show. And people were there. Every person, it was limited capacity, but as always, you couldn't get a ticket. The ratings are going to be huge for TV. I don't know why these sports organizations listen to these people who push this narrative, because as we're seeing, once again, record numbers of people are going to watch golf because people are tired of politics, and golf stays out of politics.
I could almost guarantee I could almost guarantee you one thing. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, I hate the Cowboys, whether you love him or hate him, built his own stadium with his own money. I could guarantee you, as he's watching this crap going on in football, he's sitting there thinking what Ben's thinking. I want to sue, but I'm involved, so I can't really sue myself right now. But Jerry Jones must be sitting there thinking, I've invested billions of dollars and I've had my stadium closed for the last year and all of this stuff. And I don't think it's from the owners. I don't know where it's coming from, other than Rob Manfred, however you pronounce his name, the commissioner, is a total jackass. I don't know if he conferred, got together with the owners, to be honest with you.
I'd like to know what clubs he belongs to, and I'd like to know what neighborhood he lives in. And I think that would be a good start on him. I mean, if you want to start playing the game, let's have whatever detective agency or investigators are available, and there are plenty. look into what clubs these guys are members of. I know years and years ago, when wifey and I used to have lunch or dinner rather at the El Dorado down in Indian Wells in the desert with this very, very nice woman who was a member. And I would look at the list of members, and they're gigantic big wheels in corporate America. Many of them were politicians. And this club was so restricted, it was insane. And why isn't anyone looking at that? Why isn't anyone looking at the Chevy Chase Club? I mean, these are gaping errors in consistency of judgment about exclusivity and diversity. Gaping.
And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody that's live in the YouTube chat. Chat away. We enjoy it. Thank you. Don't forget to download our podcast, wherever podcasts, and don't forget to give that 5-star review. You could also get Ben's email, benstein.substack.com. We have something extremely important tonight that we're discussing, not because I came up with it, but we are discussing this petition that's on the Media Action Network right now, MediaActionNetwork.com. That's MediaActionNetwork.com. Sign the petition, show your support. Ben Boychuk from American Greatness is here tonight. Welcome back. We miss you, Ben. You're also hopefully going to be, and I will be on Rob's show tomorrow, 93.1.
Is that, wait a second, is that the future of conservative talk radio?
Yes, I was waiting for you guys to, and this is the next question I want to ask you guys, because we were all, obviously some of you aren't sports fans. Ken, when you were young, you weren't a sports fan? Okay, so Ben Boychuk and everybody got him like with the worst crowd of non-sports fans. But when you were young, when you were 9, when you were 11 or 10 or 11 or 12 years old, remember you'd be in school, Rob, and it didn't matter. You could debate bands with your friends, right? You debate if you liked Elton John or Billy Joel more. You debate if you were a Yankee fan or a Met fan. You didn't think about. You didn't have to be inundated or by this mass Ben Stein culture being preached upon. 9-year-old children being indoctrinated. And I mean, are 9-year-old kids right now, like, discussing who to trade, or do they go, you can't trade him because he's black?
I don't know, but it reminds me a lot. Well, let me back up a moment. Wifey and I almost every night watch documentaries about World War II. And I have various close friends I try to teach about World War II. It is fascinating to watch about the Nazi propagandizing of young German children and what they taught them, and taught them who to hate. See, in America, we were indoctrinated too. I mean, my sister and I went to a wonderful, really wonderful elementary school called Parkside Elementary School. It's just a glorious place. And we were taught to be very, very proud of being Americans. Very proud. And things were great. Now, true, things were not great. The school was segregated, and there was only one black person on the campus, and his name was Willie, and he was a janitor, and he was an incredibly good janitor and a very nice man, and had been a soldier for the United States of America. That was outrageous that black people were not allowed in. But we were taught the country had problems and inconsistencies, but it was still the best hope of mankind, and it still is. Let's indoctrinate young Americans on the idea we are the greatest. We can be better. We can be better. We can be better, and we will be better, but we do not want to be ordered around. And if I may go on just for a few more seconds, someone I worship, I know that Judah doesn't, is a commentator on Fox News. He has been going out all over the place against the Justice Department for their persecution of the people who strolled around the Capitol on January 6th. They didn't attack anybody. They didn't shoot anybody. Their doors were open. They didn't break through barricades. They didn't knock out glass doors. And they're being prosecuted as if they were killers, as if they were a group of mad killers. And many of them have been in prison now for months without any specific charges being leveled against them. This is really a terrifying situation in a democracy. Not supposed to happen. The Constitution has just been thrown away by the Biden Justice Department in terms of these men and women. And I agree, by the way, it is not a good idea for these people to go walking around half naked in the Capitol. But They should have due process. That's the whole meaning of the Constitution. They should have due process. Where is their due process? Where is
No,
it?
you bring up a great point, but Ben Boychuk, I want to get back to that point a little bit about, when we were growing up, the arguments that I'm sure you were arguing with your friends over who are your favorite bands, who are this, who are that, normal conversations for children to have. And I really do wonder if they're having these dialogues today, where it was just as simple as what was on TV last night, who's your favorite athlete, do you love that singer? Is this going on, or have we just lost our minds?
Yeah, well, you touched on something a minute ago that I thought was really salient. The culture is so highly racialized. So on Easter Sunday, my daughter wanted to watch this movie called Hop, which was about the Easter Bunny. It came out in 2011, and my son, who's normally pretty sensible about this sort of thing, there's this whole subplot with it where the worker chicks, like baby chickens, chicks lead a coup d'etat against the Easter Bunny. And my son was looking at this and he goes, "That's awfully racist against the chicks." And I said, "What are you talking about?" If anything, it's not racist, it's speciesist. But that it never would have occurred to me to make such an observation. But the generation coming of age has been so steeped in it that it's almost inescapable.
Well, Ben made the point of, and this comes down to, how does a society propagate its values from generation to generation? And we are at a tricky point in America right now. How does a society do that? They do it through the educational establishment. We do it through, obviously, people and your parents. And certainly when there was a 3-generation household living together, as we did 100 years ago, where the grandparents lived with the parents, lived with the kids, that was also a propagation of values. And the value, and entertainment is a way to propagate values. And you look at the entertainment that I grew up on. You look at Mayberry RFD, with a little kid would lie and then he'd get in trouble and his dad would tell him, "Don't lie, because it'll make your life worse, even though it feels better in the moment." Or the kid would steal something, or the drunk would do. And you look at the values that they are getting now through entertainment, and those are very, very different. They're not what Ben said. We are the greatest country who has fed and freed more people than any country that's ever existed on the world. Instead, it's Abraham Lincoln was a racist and everybody sucks and this and that. And our fight so needs to be in those upstream battles to help propagate what it means to be an American, the things that keep us tight in together, the things that made our society rise up higher than any society on the world in the history of humanity. I mean, we are at that point. We are at the apex of that. And that is being torn down to a generation who's being taught a lot of different things. And that's what we need to fight against, more so than anything that's happening in the Senate today.
Especially, I think we need to fight against the notion that this is a racist country. Back up. Yes, certainly it was. There's no doubt about it. Samuel Johnson, great genius, super genius, said, is it not, a long time ago, at the time the Declaration of Independence was being written, roughly at that time, not exactly at that time, is it not amazing, said Samuel Johnson, that the greatest criers of freedom are the drivers of slaves? And that's a very good point. This country was fundamentally founded on a terrible, terrible, terrible sin of racism and human slavery. It was fundamentally horrible. A war was fought to free these slaves. Never, ever in the course of human history has any master race, and I put that in quotes, fought and lost 600 or more thousand of themselves to free the lower rated in terms of political and civil rights race. This never happened before. Why is nobody ever giving America credit for that? Yes, the slavery was horrifying. But the fact that people died all over the country in blood-soaked fields all over the country to free these slaves, that was a miracle of human decency. And we never get any credit for it.
as the resident sports expert of the world according to Ben Stein, can I weigh in on this?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please.
So we had this conversation Monday before the national championship game, because on Saturday night there was an incredible game between Gonzaga and UCLA.
You're talking baseball?
Yes, it's the large baseball, the big orange large
The orange one, basketball. Thank you.
took place here in Indianapolis.
The national game. Okay.
Gonzaga's this undefeated team. The UCLA barely gets in the tournament. This is the Final Four. It goes to overtime. Guy hits this incredible bank shot to win the game in overtime. And it was arguably the greatest big game ever played in college basketball history. And we started talking about how memories have been diluted because of social media. Like, it used to be, if you watched a basketball game 35 years ago, you could tell that story for 35 years based on your memories. It was your story, where you were, who you were with, how you felt at the time. And now I don't think people have that anymore, because immediately they get on their phones and they go to social media and they look at what other people are saying about these events. So your memories almost get collided with everybody else's memories, and you lose the specialness of the moment. And we're saying that I think that's true with social media now, in terms of politics and everything else, where your own free thought gets so smashed into everybody else's thoughts that it's almost like the independence and specialness of what you see and believe is diluted now and knocked down by everybody else.
That's a brilliant psychological observation, and my hat's off to you. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna play that tomorrow on the air, Ben, that you said that's brilliant.
I will. What time is your show on? I'll go on and tell you. It's brilliant.
9 a.m. to noon. But I want to go back to what Ben Boychuk was saying, Ben. When your son said this, I know you were in shock, but I don't think you ever in your wildest dreams thought your son would be dissecting. I mean, and he's what, 18, 17?
18, we'll be 19 shortly.
What's he dissecting?
And he's a great, and he's a great and wonderful kid. And did it frighten you that that's what that he was thinking about that movie?
No, it wasn't frightening. It was a little bit irritating, because he's generally pretty sensible about this sort of stuff, and I just kind of thought, cut this shit, man. I don't. What is this nonsense you're peddling in my presence? It's, first of all, it's a silly animated film, for crying out loud. Not everything you have to impose a template upon, and get over it. Really,
you just raised a great point, though, and Ben Stein, I want to get this to everybody. Isn't there, like, to all these people that are imposing this on us, aren't there just people around them, or do they have no self-awareness, or is there nobody walking up to them and going, cut the shit, just stop annoying us? You are boorish, Ben Stein. I mean, is there nobody that is saying that to these people, or do they just live in one echo chamber?
There's one echo chamber. I had a very, very close friend, very, very, very close friend from college. Wonderful guy, super smart guy. Now a law professor at a fine school. And he and I were discussing various things about race and crime and Trump. And I said, how many people in your circle of friends in the law school faculty would agree with anything I'm saying? And you are saying to me in strict confidence. And he said, none, absolutely none. Another friend who had been a very close friend of my wife's and mine at Yale is now also a law teacher. And we were writing a long time ago about Trump. And he said, I want you to know, before I write a single other word on the computer, that I disagree with everything you stand for. And I thought, well, what does that mean? I mean, we both, what can I mean? Everything I stand for? Do you disagree with the need that I have to take a whole bunch of laxatives every night? I mean, do you disagree with the fact that I like...
I disagree with that.
Like scrambled eggs. And what are you talking about? But the point is, he had to be sure that in case Berea was listening through the KGB or the NKVD of those days, that he would not get sent off to Lubyanka. I mean, That is how strict the discipline is on the left against us troublemakers. And Judah, by the way, the other day made a point which should be echoed every single day, that now we who love America, praise America, who think America is the greatest and have our lives have been benefited unbelievably by being Americans, we are the outsiders. We are the ones who are being sneered at and spat upon by the beautiful people.
But it also means we're the counterculture, so we're going to get the hippie chicks.
Well, you're young. I that's not part of my life.
Hopefully
hey,
that's hopefully
wifey, you give her one of those headbands. Come on, you can.
Hopefully the hippie chick has changed a little bit. And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, Benjamin, Jeremy Stein. I love watching and reading what you guys are chatting about. Even if it's totally off topic, it's greatly appreciated. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the podcast. It's been great. And remember, go to benstein.substack.com we send out emails 3 times a week. Of course, Ken, subscribe to Media Action Network. Go to Ben Boychik's site, which is amgreatness.com or American Greatness. And of course, listen to Rob every day, 6 days a week on 93.1. Bam.
Bam.
The and listen to Judah tomorrow. Tomorrow, Judah's going to be on the show.
I might be the most self-effacing, thank you. But because I think this is just an important thing to do. For me, these things are just doing what we're doing is just really important. It doesn't matter if our names are out there or whatever. I just think it's very important. And people that say this isn't about sports, sports has always been the great equalizer. Sports has been, if you look at the Olympics, if you look at all sports, it was always the one thing nations shared in common. And at the end of wars, we were able to we knew, if you look at who are still at odds with Ben Stein, certain countries, they were countries that never really entered the stream of sports, whether it's, I don't believe Iran has entered the Olympics, but with Russia,
I think they did. I think actually they're very, very good wrestlers.
Well, grapplers, definitely. But Russians, as bad as it ever got, and when Carter boycotted the Russian games, when the Cold War was over, we had been in the playing field with them. They were an enemy, but we knew them. They were still human to us, and I really believe that sports has always been the great sort of human equalizer. And Ben Stein, we've lost that. We've lost that.
Well, we're losing. I don't know if we've lost it completely, but we're rapidly losing it. Well, let's face this horrible, sad fact. The media and their bosses in the Democrat Party, or their colleagues, are about dividing America. I am a great, considering my age and weight, a great student of the Civil War. Clearly, at the beginning of the Civil War, there are a lot of people in newspapers, that's pretty much it in terms of media, who were clearly stirring up division. They wanted division. They wanted the Union to be dissolved. They wanted for there to be a war. I think we have people in the media today who want America to be divided against themselves, and I think they want a civil war. As I read the New York Times yesterday, in a state of extreme sorrow and panic, which I guess is really my standard state. Anyway, I said to myself, these guys really want something to be the equivalent of the firing on Fort Sumter. They really want there to be a precipitating event which will divide this nation along racial lines so starkly and so violently that there will be war. And I think, by the way, in a way, it's already started. I think last summer's riots, disturbances, killings, arson, where the people who did it largely got away with it, I think in a way that was firing the first shot in the Civil War. And the fact that those people did all these violent things and were basically praised for it by a large part of the media, and while these poor guys who were wandering around the Capitol not doing a thing except sucking their thumbs, they're being threatened with life imprisonment. There's some kind of war going on there.
Yeah, but to Ben's point, real fast, if I can, we last Tuesday when I was on with you guys, we laid out the story about the Malik Muhammad guy here in Indianapolis who led that angry.
That is an incredible story.
To the governor's mansion, threatening to storm the governor's mansion on the news, saying I went there expecting to die. And within days, he's meeting with the governor in a VIP meeting, a Republican governor in a VIP meeting with him and the first lady. And then 3 months later, he's in Portland and has now been arrested for attempting to kill police officers back in September and October of last year. So it's, who do we even turn to trust when the Republicans are giving VIP treatment to lunatics?
Well,
why did he do that?
Yeah, why?
Because he's weak and he's woke.
What? I'm sorry.
He's weak and he's woke, and he was.
That's a great bumper sticker. He's weak and woke. And Rob, if you don't make that as a bumper, that's except weak. He's weak and woke. But I want to get to Ken and Ben Boychuk quickly, because Ken, one of the things I always loved on Fox News, I always loved it in the past, I should say, was, I mean, everybody loves to talk about the beauty of Roger Ailes, and it was just beautiful. But what he did really well was he allowed the other side to be heard too. So every segment you'd almost watch, there would be a Democrat and a Republican. I don't care what other network you're watching, you don't hear that except for Fox News. And I always loved listening to Hannity and Combs, because I didn't agree with Alan Combs, but he was a human being. And he made it okay to disagree and be on the other side and still hug afterwards. Ken.
Look, we always viewed ourselves as being 15 degrees to the right of center. We never viewed ourselves, when I was there for 20 years, of being like the conservative whatever. We never were like, there were never in any kind of editorial meeting that I was at, and I was with Roger Ailes twice a day in editorial meetings and senior staff. And it was never elect this guy or do something. It was about give them their fair point of view. And yeah, I mean, eventually it was like, look, there was no accident that Hannity was better looking than Combs. Roger once said, he said, there's one show in America, in the history of America, where the conservative was better looking than the liberal. Have you ever seen that before? And he was right. So, I mean, look, we had our thumb on the scale a little bit because we needed to be about 15 degrees to the right of center, but that's where the audience was. I mean, the audience isn't all out on the far right or far left. They're kind of in the middle. It's like a bell curve in America, and the media was on the left side of the bell curve, and we just needed to be a little bit on the right side of that. Probably, he used to use the analogy of the Apollo missions coming back to Earth. You come in at too steep of an angle, you burn up on reentry. You come up too shallow, you skip off the atmosphere, and you go forever. We knew that if we went too far to the right, it would create problems with advertisers and just push us too far over. We were just a hair to the right, and we discovered a great niche in America, which was half of the country, and it worked okay.
And Billy did it brilliantly.
More than okay. And now I think Newsmax is trying to hit them. They don't. They're still a startup, really in many ways. Sure. Somebody, I hope, will be hitting them. But I mean, it's really interesting. From 1932, 33 to 1953, we had all Democrat White Houses. And people thought that was the way it was going to be forever. And then along came Dwight Eisenhower, and we had a Republican 8 years. And had there not been wild cheating in 1960, we would have had more Republicans. But so things can change. We need to find a wonderful person to be a candidate. I think the data is pretty overwhelming at this point that Americans are very worried about the border. They're very, very worried about tremendous deficit spending. Let's find a leader who will get to mobilize and get the country moving. They're very, very worried about racialization of America. This country is supposed to be about treating people equally, not about giving preference to people. Yes, absolutely. If people are poor and broke and intelligent and don't have any money in their family to go to school, of course, I believe the government and the taxpayers should help them without question. But to have an ongoing system where one race is favored over another, that, at least to me, is not America.
So in Oakland, we recently had the mayor stand up and say, I'm now promoting this program that is going to give a quasi $500 a month or some types of thing to poor people in Oakland, as long as they are black, brown, yellow, any other color except white.
Well, there are no poor whites in
Horrifying.
Oakland. Let's face it.
Yeah, there actually are. There's a lot of poor white. I know that was a joke. I mean, whites are kind of, they're like 35% of that city. I mean, it's a minority of that city. There's a lot of working class or sub-working class people. And so part of me now they've kind of like, they changed their website. You guys maybe talked about this last week because I wasn't around last week because my son was visiting. And I was thinking, and I want to ask you guys if this was a smart thing, because it's a quasi-racist move. I was thinking, so I've got a car that's used, but it's a pretty nice Mercedes that's been sitting out in my driveway for a long time, and I haven't driven it in a while. I was thinking of saying, I'm going to give this as a lottery to anybody in Oakland, as long as they're poor and as long as they're white. Because the only poor group who's excluded by this private public partnership. Kind of a racist thing, but obviously trying to make a point. Would that have been a smart thing, or would that have been elitist and racist?
I think it's a great thing to do, and the racialization of this country terrifies me. I have been a fighter for equal rights for African Americans all of my life, and I still am. I work with Black people almost every day. I hope I treat them as well as they treat me. That's where I think we want to be. I don't think we want to be on the side of promoting one race above another. That is not going to get us anywhere, and it's not going to get them anywhere. I'm not, as Ferris Bueller might have said, I'm not Black. I'm never going to be Black. But I think it's incredibly insulting to tell Black people they cannot get ahead unless they are favored.
And just so you know, I have a little yurt in Oakland, and I have about 1,000. I will get 1,000 lottery tickets. Ben Boychuk, you guys seem to be very fair and balanced. I don't always agree with everything that's said on American greatness, but you take different points of views. And it's so bizarre that it's conservative sites that often do this way more, not even way more, 100,000 times more than any liberal site out there.
Well, I think we're fair. I don't think we're very balanced. I don't think we're very balanced. I think I do think that one thing we have tried to do, I would say with limited success, is we have tried to kind of fill the role that National Review fulfilled back in the 50s and 60s, where, you had a lot of really interesting debates on the right, hashing out questions that were relevant at the time, and the questions that are most relevant right now, in the sort of a post, whether it's a post-Trump era or a Trump interregnum, I don't know what you want to call it, but with a resurgence of kind of nationalism and populism, and how that fits within American conservatism generally. I mean, we have arguments internally about whether we should even call ourselves conservative, because the conservative movement as we see it today has really not conserved very much, and has really kind of failed to advance any of the sorts of the agendas that they claim to find important. I mean, there's a reason that my friend Michael Anton in 2016 wrote the Flight 93 election. And what he was really talking about, I mean, the point that a lot of people miss from that piece is that if conservatives in the context of Trump's election and the the angst about electing that guy, and he made the very simple point: if conservatives believe everything that they've been saying for the past 30 or 40 years about the urgency of the culture war, then what choice do you have? Because to go the other direction, Hillary Clinton, would be to assure complete defeat. And so we've been trying to be a place where we can hash out arguments along those lines. But
well, that's a very Ben. You raise it, Boychuk. That's an exceptionally extraordinary point. that came on too late with the Never Trumpers, with people that were they got together this time, in some ways way too late. They should have been there. The Ben Shapiro wasn't a full Trump supporter. It drives me up a fucking, excuse my language, wall. You have this observant Jew that Trump did everything for Israel. Everything. That alone should have been Ben Shapiro's signaling to support this guy. This guy did more for Middle East peace than any president has done.
Except Nixon.
And I knew you were going to say that. Since
and Jimmy
Nixon,
Carter.
Oh, come on.
Even Jimmy
I saw the
Carter.
handshake. Come on, I was there.
I think even Jimmy Carter came out from his Habitat of Humanity and said that the Major League Baseball, the All-Star game, was a terrible idea. But we are running out of time, and I really just want to push this one more time. I want to thank everybody that's been listening in chat. I want to thank everybody for their contributions. It means the world to us. Don't forget to download the podcast. Even if you listen to the show, it helps us out greatly. And we are going to send this out to people, email it to people, take their phones and get them to sign this petition. This isn't just about a baseball game. I was just thinking, one of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams. And it's not really about baseball. It's about a father and son having a catch. And it's
beautiful.
And that to me is what they've taken up from us. They've taken the father and son having a catch. And I'm convinced that if we could get this thing going in Georgia, if you build it, to quote James Earl Jones, if you build it, Ray, they will come. People will come. And I'm convinced 400,000 strong Trump supporters will go to Washington civilly and be there, because that's what they are. And I want to thank everybody. Ben Boychuk, tell people where they could find you.
You can find us at American Greatness, www.amgreatness.com.
You guys too cheap to get the whole word? Why is it am greatness? It took me like 3 times.
You really want to know?
What is this? Is this like an Amway product? What the?
Somebody else has it, and
bastards.
Maybe we could do a GoFundMe or something.
Right, it's cool.
It's
cool.
It's
okay. Ken, tell people where they could find you.
Media Action Network, MediaActionNetwork.com. Thank you, Robert.
I suggest everybody go there. His stuff is great on Parler. Go get his stuff. And of course, you can find Rob Kendall 6 days a week on 93.1.
WIBC.
Bam. The future of conservative.
Judah will be on tomorrow. I will talk to you in 9 hours, Judah.
And of course, last but not least, Ben, you are truly a teacher. You are truly America's professor. You have taught generations of people through all the work you've done. And I mean that. When I came up with this idea, this is 18 years of me talking to you. And I don't say that lightly. So as the idea comes to my head, it's coming through your head. And you can find Ben at spectator.org, but also on Parler at Ben Stein. Ben, sing us out tonight.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. And we are the rebels. We are the fighters for freedom. And if you ask what is a conservative is someone who wants to preserve the extremely basic principle that human beings have rights under the Constitution, and they're sacred.
And I thought you were going to say, this is brilliantly said, Ben. And I thought you were going to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," but that's for another time. That's actually when this thing gets to Trump, we sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and we stand and sing the national anthem together. And I want to thank everybody again for listening. We will see you Saturday night. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you, everybody, again.
Good night, gentlemen. Thank you. One time.
Thank you, Ben Boychuk. God bless you, sir. God bless you. We have missed you. Ben Boychuk, we have missed you very, very much. Very, very much.
100%.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it.
Excuse me, very much. We hope to see you a lot more. God bless you, sir.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.